Well, today we'll be going over the concept of while loops. So previously when we went over for loops and if statements, so I recommend you watch those before you watch this video. So let's just get into it. So while loops. So how do while loops work? I'm just going to write some basic syntax. So while condition is true, or we can actually just do condition. Yeah, so it's really simple. All it does is that like the for loop, it's gonna keep iterating, or sorry, not iterating. It's gonna keep looping. But the difference between a while loop and a for loop is that the while loop you can kind of like, I guess you could say it's more flexible with the conditions. So you don't necessarily need an iterator or anything here. You just need like, I guess you could think of it as like an if statement. So for if statements, you have if I equal, or we can do a equals 3. So for this if statement right here, what we have is a condition which checks if a is equal to 3, and if it's true, then we execute what's inside here. So the while loop is going to basically be doing the same thing, where it's going to check if the condition is true, and then it's going to execute the code. So we have like while a is equal to 3, keep going. So what we have here is we've set this integer equal to 3, or integer a equal to 3, and then we're going to check in the while loop if a is equal to 3, and if it does, we execute what's inside. But the difference between a while loop and an if statement is that once it executes the code, so it's gonna print keep going since a is equal to 3. It's gonna loop back and then check if the condition is true and then execute it again. So it's gonna keep doing the same process over and over again as long as this condition is true. So in this case, we're not changing a anywhere in the while loop, and so it's actually gonna run into an infinite loop because we're not changing a. So as long as a is equal to 3, it's gonna keep going in the while loop. So yeah, so one thing that you do need to make sure while using while loops is that you don't run into those infinite loops, because yeah, they're very common problems. So a more reasonable example is, let's say int I is equal to 0 while I is less than, let's say, 10. So here we have I equal to 0, and then we check we check if I is less than 10 in the condition. So it's true, we're going to go into here, and then we're going to print keep going, and then we're going to increment I by 1. So I is now going to equal to 1, and then we're going to check the condition again, and it's still less than 10, so we're going to go back in here, we're going to print keep going, and then increment I again. So like we're going to keep doing this until we get to, let's say, like I is equal to 8. Actually, we'll put that like here. So I is equal to 8 here, and after the increment, I is going to equal to, oh, sorry, not 8. It's actually 10, so I is going to equal to 10 after the increment. So now that I is equal to 10, when we get back to the condition in the while loop, I is no longer less than 10 because it's equal to 10, and so it's going to break because the condition is no longer true. So breaks. Oh, that, okay. It's not actually coming out on the screen, so. So yeah, so the whole point of a while loop is that you can kind of change, if you're iterating through something, you can increment the iterator here. And yeah, the condition um, you set in here like an if statement. So I guess if you're comparing it to a for loop you have kind of like a set syntax where you do you have like I is equal to 0, I is less than 10, and then I plus plus. So you're basically incrementing by 1. But in while loops, you have a little bit more flexibility than that. So for example, if we do like so if we have something like this, we can basically like we can increment in various manners by using if statements within the while loop. And there are a lot of other ways you can utilize while loops to make the code, I guess, simpler and more efficient than using for loops. And yeah, I guess just one thing to remember with while loops is that you have to make sure your condition will be met at some point so that it doesn't, I guess, loop on forever. And yeah, thank you for watching.